Shalom, shalom. Peace to Yasharala. It's time to address this war situation. And I want Yasharala to not be afraid nor give any truth to these so-called war stages that we are hearing about between Russia, Ukraine. See, one does not understand prophecy nor the time frame that we are in. And if you're into the New Testament, then you're probably just going crazy right now in strong belief like rumors of war or idol is coming. But if you are to knock a higher only, and you've been seeking the true living creator, and you've been reading this book from Genesis through Malachi strongly, eagerly, then you will have some sort of understanding of what's going on. Now, starting at Zechariah chapter 12, this is taking place with Yasharallah or Yasharallah return back home. Now, I'm starting from here because after this point, then a nuclear war between the other nations and the other nations being brought down to its fold comes into play. So we're going to deal with Zechariah chapter 12, 13, and I think a little bit of 14. Then we're going to go into Daniel chapter 2 and put this thing together. Now when you read, this is Ahijah will give salvation. The oracle of Ahijah concerning Yasharallah, thus declares Ahijah, who stretched out the heavens, founded the earth, and formed the spirit of man within him. Behold, I am about to make Yerushalayim a cup of staggering to all the surrounding peoples. The siege of Yerushalayim will be against Yahweh. So this is taking place with the bloodline of Yerushalayim already in place in the land. If you don't know who the bloodline of Yerushalayim is, that is the seed of Dawi, sons and daughters, the seed of Lawad, sons and daughters, and the seed of the high priest, sons and daughters, and that's also Benjamin, sons and daughters, and Yahweh, sons and daughters. That make up the bloodline of Yerushalayim. So that is the bloodline that is being spoken about right here. And then it says the siege of Yerushalayim will be against Yahweh. So it's a conflict going on right now. So then verse 3, on that day I will make Yerushalayim a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will surely hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it. Now we're going to go into that Daniel too, where Ahijah is that stone. So that stone that Ahijah is going to make the bloodline of Yerushalayim will be of him, his spirit, his fear. He will be their strength, their power. So this is what this is talking about right here. So then verse 4, on that day declares Ahijah, I will strike every horse with panic and its rider with madness, but for the sake of the house of Yahweh, I will keep my eyes open when I strike every horse of the peoples with blindness. Then the clans of Yahweh shall say to themselves, the inhabitants of Yerushalayim have strength through Ahijah of hosts, their power. See that? For Ahijah would be their power during this time, because shortly the nations before us that we were gathered from will come against us once we are in the land. See, it doesn't end once Yasharallah returns back unto the land. Once the house of Dawi is in order, the house of Zadok, the high priest, is in order, things is functioning, the temple is built, things is in place. Once that is in order, it doesn't stop. The nations around about will come against us for the last battle, the last war. So this is coinciding what I'm saying and what I'm trying to convey. The hearing of wars of Russia and Ukraine, and a lot of people speaking out talking about it's about to be a nuclear war, like America's going down and all. That's not taking place until the seed of Zion is brought back, and that is the bloodline of Yerushalayim. The house of Dawi, sons and daughters, the house of Levi, sons and daughters, the house of Yahweh, sons and daughters, and the house of Benjamin, sons and daughters. spread it to the four corners of the earth until we are brought back, restored, and then Ahaya is going to bring down all the nations. He's not going to do that while we're here. So there's no nuclear war here because he hasn't delivered us yet. So verse 5, no, we have verse 6. On that day I will make the clans of Yahweh like a blazing pot in the midst of the wood, like a flaming torch among sheaves. And they shall devour the right to the left and all the surrounding peoples, while your Yerushalayim shall again be inhabited in its place in Yerushalayim. You see that? So that's the peoples, this the bloodline. Yerushalayim shall be again inhabited in its place. Because, the nations is coming up against us. So, verse 7, and Ahaya will give salvation to the tents of Yahweh first. You see that? So when the nations is coming up against us, Ahaya is going to deliver while we are in the land, not here in the Americas, spread it to the four corners of the earth. Ahaya is going to deliver the house of Yahweh first. This is not talking about the southern kingdom. This is literally talking about the house of Yahweh right here. It's going to deliver them first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem may not surpass that of Yahweh, right? Because the house of David and the king who sits on the throne don't want to boast over the house of Yahweh, because Ahaya has already given them a great portion in doing wonderful things. So when Ahaya is just in his truth, in his mercy, in his compassion, he's going to bless the house of Yahweh first. So this is what this is talking about. Now we're going to... should I just go ahead and go into 8 right quick? Yeah, I'm going to go into 8 right quick. Now, verse 8, on the day Ahaya will protect the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the feeble among them on that day shall be like David, and the house of David shall be like a power, like the angel of Ahaya going before them. So during this time when the nations is coming up against us, it's saying that Ahaya will make the weakling, the weak ones, the lame ones among the seed of David, and make them like a powerful entity, like Ahaya, or like the angel of Ahaya. Because you know how Ahaya sent his angels to do his work, like he did with Sodom and Gomorrah. Right? So we know about that testimony. But that's how the seed of David is going to be in the land when the nations is coming about against us. This is during the time of the last battle, the last war. So now we're going to go ahead and drop on down to 13. And let's see. Now, to give further understanding that this is a time frame of when we are in the land, verse 1, chapter 13 is letting you know, on that day there shall be a fountain open for the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to cleanse them from the sin of uncleanness. Now, this is where New Testament Christians and even Christian Hebrew Israelites get that baptism from, because this fountain is the temple waters, the healing waters that will heal the land and heal the descendants of Yeshua Allah. This is the water right here. But that's when the temple is built first. So the time frame and putting things in perspective, Yeshua Allah is in the land. The house of David, the Messiah king from the line of David, is set up in place. Zadok, the high priest, is set up in place. Everything is in order. This is the time frame of us in the land, and this is during the time frame when the nations will round about and go against us. Now, okay, I'm going to just leave it right there. I don't really have to go too much down no more. You can read this all for yourself and get a pretty good understanding. It's a beautiful thing. Verse 2, I love it. Ahaya of hosts is talking about cutting off all the names of the idols from the land, because there's still idolatry within the land right now. They still serving idols in the land of our, supposed inheritances, right? The Mona, Arad, they still serving idols. You know what I mean? And there's numerous other places that's belonging to us. They serving idols. So we know that this is not talking about now, because if it was, then there would be no idolatry within the land. This is talking about a future time when we all go back and everything is in order and set up in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to 14, I believe. Now this is during the time of the battle, and now this is the true coming day of Ahia, what's going to take place. Like Ahia says right here, behold, the day is coming for Ahia when the spoil taken from you, you will be divided in your midst. Now this is us when we're back, and you know, captivity is still not over yet because the nations is still going to come about against us. You know, so some of us will go back into exile. So this is the true coming day of Ahia. And also this is where they try to implant that New Testament idol right there. You know what I mean? Because it's going to talk about Mount Olives. But truthfully, that is Ahia returning. You know what I'm saying? And he will sit on Mount Olives and go against these nations. But we're going to drop down to verse 2. For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. See that? I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. And the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and our women raped. Half of the city shall go out into exile. This time, half of the city. So half of the city of the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the bloodline of Jerusalem, will go into exile. Then that's going to cause Ahia to really stir up because he already delivered us from captivity, right? And the nations is looking and they already mad about that. So they feel some type of way because they like, how these so-called niggas, coons, niggers, these old stupid, ignorant, incompetent people, how do they have such a great power to deliver them when we've been, chastising them and looking down upon them for so many years and centuries and decades? How are they truly something? So they're going to feel some type of way. You know what I mean? And they already going to feel some type of way about our great power at Aya. So they're going to come about. So the Aya is letting you know. They're going to come about and go against the city of Jerusalem, in the bloodline. And the city, and the Aya is going to allow this city to be taken. You know what I mean? Because there's still going to be some forms of iniquity, some forms of refinement that needs to still take place, because only a remnant is going to be left. For Ahia says he's going to bring all of Yeshua Allah back once he delivers us from this captivity. All of us go back. Then we go up in there. But then once it's time to truly start making the holy seed and really being the head of nations and being the giver, being the lender and not being the one who's receiving at the bottom feed, that's going to have to be a meek and humble people, not arrogant and ignorant people. The majority of people is arrogant and ignorant, not compassionate at all, self-entitled, self-righteous, all of that. So but the people that's going to take upon them true inheritances and bear the holy seed, that's Isaiah chapter 6 verse 13. And the women who's going to truly take hold of one man, 7 women take hold of one man, is going to bear them holy children. Isaiah chapter 4, it's going to be meek women. And the men that's going to have that obligation to bear these, to help bear these children, is going to be meek and humble and lame and, weak people who Ahia is going to make a great, strong nation out of. Okay, so where we at? We're at verse 3. Okay, then verse 3 goes, then Ahia will go out and fight against those nations when he fights on the day of battle. On that day his feet shall stand on the mountain of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west, a very wide valley, so that one half of the mount shall move northward, and the other half southward. And you shall flee to the valley of my mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach to us all. And you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, the prince of Jehoiada. Lowercase king means prince, for it's interchangeable. Then Ahia, my power, will come, and all the holy ones with them, the host of Ahia, his angels, right? His holy ones. Now, This part right here, when it's talking about a mountain, this goes in correlation with Daniel chapter 2. Now we're going to go there in Daniel chapter 2. For this mountain split it in two and went northward and southward. Why is Ahiah calling himself a mountain? This is what we must learn to understand when we're reading certain scriptures. Now we're going to go into Daniel chapter 2. Let me go there right quick. That's why I like this app, because I can go straight to it. And I can go in. We're going to drop all the way down to verse. We're going to start at 31, because this is in Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Now, verse 31. You saw, O king, which is lowercase, O prince, it should say, and behold, a great image. This image was mighty and exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Now, if you're not aware, you should know that the head, the image that was fine gold was the head, and that was Babylon. And its chest and arms of silver was the Medes and the Persians, right? And its middle thighs of bronze was Greece. Now, its legs of iron and partly of clay is this dominion here, the dominion of the Amalekite Edomites, the so-called Illuminati, the illuminated ones, illuminated to this book of their prophecy of their end, and the prophecy of Yeshua, and the prophecy of the coming of Ahiah, and the prophecy of the Messiah, seed of David, the Messiah, seed of Zadok. All of these prophecies, they are illuminated too. One must know that they first looked at the book of Daniel like a comic book. They didn't understand it because things wasn't coming to pass yet. And then when certain things start coming to pass, especially when who was that? Was that Ptolemy? Ptolemy went into Jerusalem and sacrificed the pig on the altar in Jerusalem, and then created, December 25th, that idol that they now use as modern day Jesus Christ or Yeshua, or whatever you want to call him. Once that took place, then they start looking at this book like, whoa. Oh, this book is real. And then once Constantine started, once he fulfilled changing the times and laws, because that's what he did. That's how we got this calendar, the Gregorian calendar. He changed the time. Then we got leap years. He changed the laws, instituted these type of laws that we are using today, away from the laws of a higher power. So once they start seeing these things, because you must understand that the Amalekite Edomite, which is the first of the nations, which is the illuminated ones, which has dominion and power, which takes hold of all the resources and finances, which is the banking system, which runs the world, has dominion and has the power today. So all through time, they've been waiting for their moment, their time. So if you never read the book of, I think it's the Protocols of Zion, but it's a number before that, but it's the Protocols of Zion, right? If you haven't read that book, check it out. It's a great book. It talks about their plan of dominion, their plan of taking over and doing things a certain way, which came to pass. And then we know in 1948 that they went into the land and they started Israel. But they've been claiming to be Yeshua or Israel or Israelite. Well, they never claimed to be Israelites. They always called themselves Israelis. See, Zion Lex, this is a sidebar, Zion Lex and them fake Agent Hebrews, them fake ones, they would say that, Israelis doesn't mean citizen of the land. Like, Israelis is the correct term for being a true Israelite. False. You know what I mean? Because they bought and paid for. That's why they saying that. They about monetary gain. They not about the Father's business. They about monetary gain. But they've been calling themselves Israelis, which should be a sign for us to know that they are only citizens of the land and not the blood barriers of the land. They don't have the inheritance of the land. You know what I mean? So, I don't want to get too far because I go too far. So, during this time right here, like starting at verse 2, this fine gold is Babylon, chest and arms of silver is Mede and Persians, and the thighs of bronze is Greece, and the legs of iron and feet partly of iron and clay is this dominion, the American dominion, the dominion of the Malachite Edomite. Now, when you drop down to right here in verse 34, and it says, as you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand. That means you can't give no credit to no one when Ahia delivers and bring down these nations. You can't say my idol did it. You can't say Jesus did it. You can't say Yeshua did it. You can't say Allah did it. You can't say Buddha did it. You can't say you did it. No one can give themselves credit because this stone was cut out without human hands. Ahia did it. He broke forth from his abode, which is in heaven, right? He broke forth from his abode, and he struck the image on his feet of iron and clay and broke them into pieces. So he came down and struck this. Now, this is the whole point really of this video. When Ahia strikes the feet of iron and clay, he's not going to strike it and clearly wipe it out until he brings Zion all the way out. So there's no nuclear war action taking place while Yeshua and Zion is still here in captivity. If you truly read and understand it, then you will know that it's all propaganda. It's all smoke and mirrors, dog and pony shows. Ukraine, Russia, all of that is all staged. They just playing and playing fiddle with that New Testament. Rumors of war, the end of everything. Nah, they setting in stone that little idol that they want to bring forth. You know? We ain't forget that they might try to use that blue screen in the sky and fake a coming of this Jesus Christ or Yeshua, dude. We ain't going for it. But you must understand that Yeshua must be out of captivity, brought back before nuclear war action take place, because that's when Ahia is bringing down all nations in America. The Americas is no longer going to be standing to hold us as prisoners anymore. So then when you go down to verse 35, and this is when we're going to wrap this up and put this whole thing together. Verse 35, then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But that stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Now that's what I'm talking about. These mountains being talked about in Zechariah, spread eastward, northward, or eastward, southward, That mountain is Ahia. So when he says flee to these mountains, he's meaning flee unto him. Go unto him. Listen to his instructions. Go here, go there. Because Ahia is now turning himself, his word, his impact into a mountain that all his people and all people can run up under. You don't have to just be a so-called black African American, Afro, Latin. You don't have to be a so-called Yeshua to come up under Ahia. All people can come under Ahia. It's not about just us. All people. But you must know where to run, where to go up under, what to go up under. You must know the signs, the signals, and you must pay attention to the propaganda that they're putting forth. So like 35 says, then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold. See, the iron, the clay, the bronze already been dealt with. That's Greece. The silver, Medes and Persians, already been dealt with. The gold already been dealt with. That's old Babylon. It's just the iron and the clay has to be dealt with. So then, and that is here. That's the feet and toes. The iron and clay must be dealt with first. All together. Then it says, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. So all of these are nations. So this iron nation and clay nations, which is where we're in right now, the feet and toes, the bronze and the silver and the gold, broken in pieces, became like chaff, summer threshing floor, carried away, and no traces can be found. All these nations will go out, will be devoured and destroyed once all of Yasharallah or Yasharallah is out from this dominion, this captivity here. So there's no need to worry about no nuclear action between Russia and between Ukraine and all of this propaganda. It's dog and pony shows, smoke and mirrors. Everything is staged. Everything is staged. This is why they do little staging acts of certain things, but they don't go forth with it. This is why they just seeing how the people will react. Because the Amalekite, Edomite, these so-called Illuminati boys, you got your Masons, you got your Rothschilds, your Bilderbergers, your Schiffs, these major boys, they know their latter end. They know that their latter end is getting wiped out. The Amalekite, Edomite seed is wiped out eternally, not coming back at all. They know they prophecy. So they just staging everything. They just playing around. This is why these pandemics, they just trying to depopulate the people, prolong their little dominion as long as they can, because they know once Aya returns and he's on the verge, we see the events taking place. Once he returns, there's no return of them, at least their bloodline. So they just staging everything. The whole thing is a game. That's what the Matrix is about. The whole thing is about prolonging. Because they know their latter end and there's nothing they can do about it. So just like you watch the movie New Jack City, just like Nino Brown said, what'd he say? If I'm going down, I'm taking the whole world down with me. I'm taking everybody down with me. This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. Exactly. So while the Amalekite, Edomite, so-called Illuminati boys is going down, they bring in all people with them, as many as they can. They killing off as many as they can. They giving up even on their own Edomite people, so-called Jews that's living in the land. They even selling out their alliances, them allegiances that they made. Them 5 colonies that helped bring us into captivity. They bringing everybody down. That's why this pandemic is hitting everybody, not just Yasharallah. Everybody. They bringing everybody down. They Nino Brown. Yes, the Illuminati is the Nino Brown of the world. I knew I couldn't do this in 5 minutes, so I had to do a whole video, but I'm going to end this here, and I just want the point to be made. I think I kind of slipped up on my words and said that the iron has to be dealt with first. That's not true. I didn't mean to say that. I'm too hyped up right now. The iron and the clay will be dealt with last, once we are all back. Inshallah, is all back in the land. The house of Dawi is set up. You know who your Messiah King Prince is from the seed of Dawi. You will know. You will know who your Messiah seed Zadok is, the high priest is. You will know who the Levites are. The temple will be here. The temple waters will be flowing. Be ready to heal the land, heal the earth, heal our bodies, heal the remnant that endures. And once we all get back, that's when the last battle, the last war will take place. This is not me saying it. This is the word saying it. So if you see fake wars being instituted right now, you know it's not true, because that's going against the word. That's contrary to a higher. That's fake. So that's the point of this video. That what is that saying? What does that say in Jeremiah chapter 10, right? Don't be not amazed. Don't be what? Don't be. Hold on, I'm going to it. Nope, I'm going to it. I'm right here. Nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. I want to see. I know it's chapter 10. Stop playing with me. There we go. Verse 2. Ayah says, learn not the ways of the nations, nor be dismayed, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, because the nations are dismayed at them. So we not being shocked or dismayed at the signs with these funny wars. We know that's not true. They just trying to, it's propaganda for the New Testament, but it's not true because it's contrary to the word of Ahia. So let's not be dismayed at the signs of war for nuclear war at that to create fear with nuclear war unto these nations, this last nation, the nation that's the iron and the clay and the feet and toes of that statue of Nebuchadnezzar, that won't take place until all Yasharlah is brought out from this captivity. Shalom, shalom, as my wife would say, shalom, you know, she funny. Peace, y'all. Love. House of Dawi.